Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Where there are people, there will be governments. And where there is government, there will be corruption. Today, we talk about the largest corruption case of one such government. And this one seems to be brought up a lot around this time, November, and that's Turkey. This country that came to be in 1920 with the fall of the Ottoman Empire and a war for independence has long been seen as an ally to the United States in the Middle East. The recent government led by its enigmatic leader, Tayyip Erdoğan, was seen as a savior to the people of the country, bringing true democracy and economic prosperity to a nation long suffered in poverty and religious persecution. In 2013, though, the image started to falter as a wide-reaching corruption scandal was unveiled, revealing millions of dollars in bribes and billions in potential money laundering. So get ready for a political-heavy episode that includes secret recordings, money shoeboxes, and suppression of the freedom of the press on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Sounds dense.
Oh, yeah, it's quite dense.
I'm so glad I didn't do this episode. I would not be able to say anybody's name right.
This is just another one of those ones where when I start doing it, I just don't realize how much... one, that I don't know about other countries to begin with, and two, how much I'm gonna know by the time I'm done with this. To be like, why do I have to look up like I'm looking up like the political structure of Turkey and like how their governments changed over the years. I'm like, there's a lot to this.
Yeah,
it's really hard to take on a story from a group of people, a civilization, a country that you really don't know anything about going into it. So,
as Ruth from Ozark says, I don't know shit about fuck.
I vibe. That's vibes today.
Yeah, that's the vibes. That's the vibes of my life. I'm just out here doing my best.
You should get that as a tattoo. I think.
I don't know shit about fuck.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it right on my shoulder blade.
All right.
Or on my ass cheek.
Well, scapula.
Vote
action.
in the comments.
Oh my God, we'll put up a Twitter poll. Anyway, welcome.
Or I can get it across my chest.
That'll be
sternum.
That can be the third option on the Twitter poll.
Yep.
Anyway, welcome back to another episode of White Collars, Red Hands, everybody. I'm Kashan.
And I'm Nina.
And yeah, you heard us. We're talking about the largest political scandal to ever hit Turkey, which, by the way, I said it's in the Middle East, which is true, but it's also a part of Europe, which is confusing. It's like the...
well, isn't it... Okay, never, maybe I shouldn't say this. I thought Eurasia was a thing. Is that not a thing anymore?
Not really. I mean, so yes and no. Like, that's just Europe and Asia combined.
Yeah.
So it is part of Eurasia.
It's like when you're in the middle.
And honestly, I found this out the other day.
It's the Midwest.
Countries define continents differently. Like we learned there's 7 continents.
Really?
Other places will teach us only 5. We'll teach different borders like in other countries. So it's all kind of made up anyway. But if you're from...
Really?
Yes. But if you're
fascinating
from the U.S., then technically Turkey is like the easternmost, like the southeasternmost country in Europe. It's the cutoff, and then after that, you have... First of all, to acknowledge our sources today, most of the information from this episode came from primary news sources that have covered the corruption scandal and Erdogan's rise to power. But there was also information drawn from indictments filed here in America, which we'll talk a little bit later about why that happened. So, first off, let's get a little background on Turkey as a country, because it is important to understand how and why this government that was embroiled in this scandal came to power to begin with. So modern day Turkey is in the Middle East, bordered by Iran, Iraq, and then like the Aegean Sea and Greece on the other side, among others. It has multiple border countries. For those of you that know geography, unlike myself, I threw this in for you because I'm terrible at it. The region was established around 1299 AD by the Ottoman Empire, which would rule the country for over 600 years. After the Ottoman Empire joined the losing side in World War I, Turkey decided they had enough with those losers and successfully fought a war of independence in 1920, which saw the abolition of their ties to the empire officially in 1922, and then the Republic of Turkey was declared officially in 1923. For a majority of Turkey's existence as an independent country, it was run by a secular government, which just means that it was a large part of their government to not be affiliated with any religion. Turkey does have a majority Islamic population and has for quite a while. And the secular government did have a history of oppression towards Muslim and Muslim expressions, though, which I thought was weird. They actually banned...
So were they like saying no religion?
No. So they weren't like banning religion because that in itself is like not secular in a way, like because it doesn't want to be involved in banning it either. But they just like implemented policies that kind of like were obviously oppressive to Muslims. One being that they banned the use of the hijab by women, the classic Islamic covering for women, in places like government buildings and like college campuses in the 80s. Which is weird because there were a lot of Muslims. There still are a lot of Muslims, but there are still a lot of people in Turkey that are like, I'm Muslim, but I don't want our government to be Muslim, which is a really interesting idea for me. I think
that's fair, though. Like,
I think it's fair too. I just think it's super interesting coming from like America, where there's so many people that are like,
they want religion to control the government.
If they're really religious, they're like, no, I would definitely. And don't get me wrong, there's those people in Turkey as well, which we're about to talk about. Because likely, at least in part because of this history of oppression and suppression of Islam in government. An Islamic religious party was formed and won the 2002 election, and they had made this party like a year before. This is also a common thing that's not common in the States.
They made it in 2001. Interesting.
This is another common thing in other countries that's not common in the United States, is that new political parties show up all the time.
Yeah, we don't do that.
No, we've kept on.
We probably should.
We kept on to the same
We probably should.
For a while at this point.
The two-party system is not doing us any favors. So.
Nope. And Turkey, they do that thing. They do the ranked order ballots too, where you get to like, you put who you prefer in rank. And then it's not just whoever receives the first votes. You get points based on your rank. So someone who only gets like 36% of the vote as like number one can still get elected because they were more people's like second choice as well.
That hurts my head.
Ranked order system for voting is actually something that I do support.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just feel like that would get really confusing really fast.
It's not.
It hurts my head. Anyway, I'm not the one tallying it, so that's fine.
So,
if I don't have to tally it, that's fine.
I don't think they're going to come knocking down your door. Nina, we need people who can do sophisticated math.
Everyone else couldn't do it. You're our last hope.
Am I the only one left? I'm the
lone survivor.
So they formed this Islamic religious party in 2002, and this right-wing leaning conservative party was known as the, I'm probably going to pronounce these ones wrong, so sorry, the Adalet ve Kalkınma Partisi. In English, it's the Justice and Development Party, and the only reason I said the original words is because it's abbreviated as the AKP, which I will refer to it from now on.
Please.
Yeah, just the AKP and nothing else, so yeah, I won't subject you to that pronunciation anymore. The first prime minister that represented this party was Tayyip Erdoğan, a devout Muslim. Erdoğan was born into a poor family, and in order to keep some cash flowing into the household, he picked up odd jobs as a teenager, such as reselling postcards in the street. He'd buy them and then resell them at a higher price on the street.
Get the tourist.
He was also hawking these bread rings known as simit from a cart, like a little push cart. He just stole things. He didn't sell anything.
Oh, that's true.
He stole from the carts. But no, Erdoğan was selling at the cart.
Okay.
He also ended up playing semi-professional soccer at one point. The stadium that they played at is named after him now in his small town.
Funny.
Very funny. And he attended a religious vocational high school and eventually started business administration in college. Now, I didn't really get into it, so I don't even know that much, but this did come up. I saw is that there's actually disputes about if his business administration degree is real and if his high school degree is real, because like I said, he went to
well, it's a religious vocational school.
Well, that was the thing. He went to that, and then they didn't. like that wasn't valid to get into college. So then he supposedly went back and got a real high school diploma and then got this college diploma. But there are some thoughts that might be fake. The reports.
Remember that one episode we did about the diploma mills? He might have bought one.
Maybe. Yeah. I supposedly they just like said this later while he was running for office, but really he was just like.
Maybe it's like an Obama thing where they're like his
birth certificate.
Yeah, his birth certificate's not real.
Well, that's why, like I said, I didn't get into it. So this could definitely be just something that's propagated like by the other side. But I don't know. Not a lot of this gets out of Turkey reliably. You know, I don't know. In that college, supposedly, is where Erdoğan got involved in politics, joining an anti-communist group and becoming the chairman of a youth branch of the National Salvation Party.
That sounds like a cult.
They all kind of sound like cults, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
The National Salvation Party for the restoration of the original and true country of Turkey.
I don't like it.
Like something like that.
I don't like that. That sounds scary.
Eventually, he would appear on the ticket for a district representative in Istanbul, where he lived in 1986. But he would lose the election, finishing in second place. And he would also lose in 1991. So back-to-back losses. Most people would have hung up the campaigning ties.
I would have.
But he didn't. He kept going. And surprisingly, after losing those two small elections, he would somehow upset many older and more seasoned politicians to become the mayor of Istanbul in 1994, which is a big deal.
That is a really big deal, actually.
Yeah, because Istanbul is the largest city in Turkey and the most populous in all of Europe, with a staggering 15.6 million residents.
How many are in New York?
8.7.
Wow, it's
last time I checked.
That's a huge deal, actually. That's double the size of New York City.
Yeah, and he lost elections for like small district representative. Imagine that if you're like you ran for alderman here twice, and then they were like, and then you win
mayor
to be mayor of Chicago.
That's crazy, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
that's insane.
It's wild, and this actually. This went on. I forget the name of his party at this time. I think it was called the Virtue Party, but don't quote me on it because he changed parties a lot. Because literally he would like make a party and then it would get banned by the government because they could do that here, which is not a good idea.
That sounds weird. Okay.
It's not a good idea, but that's what they did. So he would just make more. And this, at the time that he won this election, they won like a bunch of seats, like all over the country, all at the same time. So, and he was largely popular in this position. He did a lot to like help infrastructure in the city, I guess was his big thing. But he was actually forced to vacate the role in 1997 when he was given a 10-month prison sentence, later reduced to 4 months on appeal, for publicly reciting a poem that described Muslims as soldiers. It was an Islamic poem that he... It said something along the lines of like, our mosque is our barracks, and our, like, the Quran, our spear, something like that.
But it was written by a Muslim person?
Yeah.
So why did he get in trouble?
Well, the then government claimed that it was an incitement of violence and religious hatred because it was like weaponizing Islam or something. I don't know.
In evangelical Christianity, we have a song called "The Lord's Army."
Yeah.
That we sing. So
God is my sword and Jesus is my shield and the Holy Spirit is my codpiece.
So it's I may never march in the infantry. It's a children's song. Ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery.
Oh, there's like motions that go with it.
I may never soar over the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. Yes, sir.
Wait, this is just...
I'm in the Lord's army. Yes, sir.
This is just the tune to Greasy Grimy Gopher Guts.
I don't know that song.
Great green globs of greasy grimy gopher guts, mutilated monkey meat, little dirty birdie feet, great green globs of greasy grimy gopher guts, and I forgot my spoon. It's another kid song, but I guess...
have never heard that song in my life.
But I guess they co-opted it to have Jesus in it, so... It's your religious background.
What did you say? Greasy, grimy gopher guts?
Yeah. Mutilated monkey meat, which it's a product of its time. I don't think this would fly now, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. Little dirty birdie feet.
We're talking about an actual monkey, is fine.
Huh?
You're going to cut this out, right?
No, are you kidding me?
Fuck.
They got to know. I mean, because here's the thing. You don't know it. I bet you guys know this song.
greasy, grimy gopher guts?
Absolutely. Kids sang it. Bet me on it.
I'm gonna have
Support me in the comments, please.
I'm gonna do a poll.
That being said, that song would probably not get you put in jail. Probably. But this poem did get Erdoğan put in jail. And this publicity of him getting jailed over this would actually bolster him would actually bolster his image, though. People came to his support. And the newly formed AKP won the first outright majority in parliament in Turkey in 2002. And it was
they have a parliament?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the first in 11 years. Also, their government has gone through multiple changes even since then.
Well, they were only established a little over 100 years ago, so that's not super surprising that they've taken so many changes.
Yeah, they've redesigned their government. But yeah, they have an executive branch, judicial branch. It's yeah. And they placed Erdoğan as Turkey's new prime minister. So he went from losing an election, mayor of the largest city, literal one of the largest leaders in the country, pretty quickly. The AKP and Erdoğan have gone on to post a Michael Jordan's Bulls type run on Turkish politics since then. And he has now been the president of Turkey since 2014. So they eliminated...
Wait. I'm sorry. So he's been prime minister. Do they have are they like France where they have a prime minister and a president?
They did.
So now they just have a president?
They eliminated the prime minister position in 2017, I believe.
Got you. Okay.
But yes, at the time they did. He was the 12th president of Turkey. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what number prime minister he was. They've had a lot.
Okay.
So I think they introduced the president and then not too long after they dissolved
The prime minister kind of acts as the VP though, right?
I have no idea.
Okay. That's fine.
So he has now been the president of Turkey since 2014, meaning that Erdoğan has been one of the prime leaders of the country for more than 2 decades at this point.
So they don't have any rules like we have about presidency.
Nope, it's just like Vladimir Putin. He can do it as much as he wants as long as people keep voting for him.
Oh, kind of like Kim Jong-un.
Voting for him.
Yeah, like Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, voting for him.
Voting.
There's air quotes around voting for those of you who don't watch the video.
Voting.
Check out the YouTube or the Spotify if you want to watch the
Well,
video.
I feel like you can imply air quotes in your voice, like voting or voting. Which one has the air quotes?
Yeah, well, maybe some of our listeners don't pick up on social cues, Nina. Maybe the Venn diagram is pretty thick on that one, okay?
You know what else is thick on that one? No.
However, that doesn't mean the run isn't without blemishes. Much like the Bulls after Michael Jordan took up baseball in 1999, the AKP had at least one terrible year amidst the run in 2013.
Michael Jordan played baseball.
Bro, I don't know how much in this lore I can get to. I'll give it to you in a sentence, okay? They won the championship 3 years in a row.
Okay.
Michael Jordan retired amidst a strike, and he went to play baseball for the Chicago White Sox for a year. They called him up for 15 days in the majors, but he played mostly in the minors. He came back to the Bulls the next year in 2000, and then they proceeded to win 3 more championships. But in that 1 year he wasn't there, they missed the playoffs.
Incredible.
So, for those of you out here who like sports, is this a good analogy? Anyway, the 1999 for the Bulls was 2013 for Turkey.
Wow.
And Erdoğan. Erdoğan had enjoyed a large economic boom since taking up the prime ministership, with Turkey's GDP tripling and exceeding $800 billion by this time.
Wow. So he was pretty good.
There was a lot of there were a lot of good things that happened under him, specifically for the economy.
Kind of like Castro.
But we're going to get into maybe some of the things that weren't so good socio-politically.
Got you.
You know? So this strong economy made him extremely popular. Obviously, a lot of people got lifted out of poverty because of his run. And the AKP had a strong presence in all of Turkey and all the provinces of Turkey. In May of 2013, Erdoğan faced his first major pushback of his leadership that started with plans to build a mall, of all things. The government announced that they wanted to bulldoze this place called Gezi Park, a large urban park in Istanbul, that caused many to show up to protest the destruction of such a beautiful place. A lot of people showed up to take part in a sit-in, and they saw tents pop up all around Gezi Park to halt any of the development that was going on. The government chose to disperse the crowd on May 29th using water cannons and tear gas, and police were seen to be beating peaceful protesters.
Some things are the same around the world.
Yep. So this spread like wildfire on social media, and more protests and marches erupted across the entirety of Turkey as a backlash to this one in Istanbul. And people were really outraged at the government's violent reaction to a non-violent environmental protest.
Yeah.
They were burning their tents. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they really went hardcore. These demonstrations across Turkey were also then met with riot gear and water cannons and police brutality across the entire country, at the end leaving 22 dead and 8,000 injured.
What?
Just from these
For a mall?
riots/protests.
That's extreme.
And to add fuel to the fire of public outrage, none of this was seen on large news stations, as the AKP had actually been cracking down on freedom of the press at the time. They had already set up kind of a history of arresting those who published like political cartoons or articles critical of Erdoğan and the government. So many would look outside their window and see clashes between people and police in the streets, tear gas billowing, and would turn on the TV and see like puff piece news segments about like cats being rescued from trees or whatever.
Oh my God. So like they were not.
There was no reporting on
No coverage
on it, but you could see it. It was
you could see what was happening.
It's on social media. It's right outside your window, but none of the news.
Oh my God.
stations
How
are reporting on it.
dystopian.
And
That would feel really. I can't imagine what that would have felt like. That would feel really crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And
That's like when we were having the George Floyd protests and like the Black Lives Matter protests and everything, like not showing that and like just showing Seinfeld. Like that would be crazy.
Yeah, but if those were even more, like if they had pulled out water cannons to shoot at them.
Yeah.
They did have riot police out there, but they didn't go that far. They did have tear gas, I guess, too. But I mean, how many people do we know that died during those? And I don't think 8,000 people.
I know a lot of people.
Sure.
I know a lot of people who got arrested. I don't know of anyone who died.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, it's reductive, right? It's not just that crackdown on the freedom of the press that led to this kind of unrest in the country, that led to these protests across the entire nation. There's a lot going on that adds to all of this, besides just censorship and the Gezi Park protests. But I've just barely scratched the surface myself on Turkish politics, and this is a good reminder that we are not experts. Mm-hmm. I'm not an expert. We are literal randos who talk into microphones. So sorry if anything is wrong in this. I did my best.
Yeah, because Sean is very thoughtful in his research. That's not the word I want to use, but you are very serious about research. So,
and I will say, I know that there's a couple of other things that I can name specifically, or at least one comes to mind, which is they started cracking down on the sale of alcohol because, you know, and that really hurt people who wanted a secular government, because banning alcohol is a very
Muslim,
is a very Islamic thing to
Yeah.
do. So they kind of felt like it was another like step in the direction of like we're moving towards an Islamic religious state and away from the like secular beginnings that were really part of Turkey for a long time. I think what they did though is they just banned the sale between like 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Oh, and alcohol could not sponsor events.
Any event?
Yeah, they couldn't have like an alcohol company sponsor an event. I do remember that.
That's weird.
So that was also, you know, people weren't happy about that.
Yeah.
So there's a bit, but this was one of the first widespread challenges to the AKP rule, though. Most of the time up to this, there was no really big backlash, just, you know, kind of like whisperings. So they got through 11 years before this happened. But
well, it also seems like, what's the word? Like, it almost seems like the party was on its best behavior as well. Like that they weren't necessarily implementing these things until like, it's like when you start dating somebody and you're like, oh, they're so great. And then they get comfortable. And then you start to see their true colors. And that can be good and that can be bad, but that's kind of how this is feeling right now, where it's like, yeah, they started doing their like actual agenda like after people got comfortable.
yeah, just like how you can be blinded by good looks, you can be blinded by a good economy. And I think that's kind of what's going on here. It's like people had money, so they were like, people are much more forgiving about their rights being taken away if they have a lot of money. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you've only known poverty and now you're getting money, you're like, yeah, you could take away some of my freedoms. Like people do that.
I mean,
it's a trade-off between freedom and security.
I could see that.
And this whole time, like there's still support for the opposition. It still exists. It's not completely silenced. Like people still support it, but there's a lot of people who still support Erdoğan and the AKP. They're like, this is the best I've lived. Like they're providing subsidies to farmers.
He's still in power, so someone's voting for him.
And I even saw one guy who was like, I think that if you are hypercritical like this, I don't agree with this, but he was like, if people are hypercritical of the government and they're doing so in a way that's like derogatory, I don't think it should be allowed. I don't agree with that, but that was something that people believed. So. But the entire thing was about to crack wide open in the late days of 2013 as the biggest corruption case in the country's history was publicly revealed. On December 17th, 2023, 91 people were detained by the Financial Crime Unit of the Turkish police. Among these 91 people were the sons of 3 Turkish ministers who were working as officials within various government organizations. Nepotism? What? Their ministers and their sons are high-ranking officials within the ministries?
No.
What's that? Others included mayors, high-ranking government officials, the director of the national bank known as Halkbank, that his name was Suleiman Aslan, and a very important Iranian businessman, Reza Zarrab. Reza was believed to be the main suspect of a huge money laundering scheme created to get around American sanctions on Iran. So, backing up a little bit, in 1979, the Carter administration handed down an executive order that said Iran constitutes a threat to national security and declared a national emergency to deal with it. So, broadly, this just gives wider executive powers to the president to make quick decisions on how to act against Iran if something were to happen. In 1995, the Clinton administration upheld this executive order and also furthered it by imposing sanctions on Iran that prohibited any exports, imports, or business dealings between the United States or citizens of the United States and Iran, or actually just Iran. I think they could deal with public or private Iranian citizens if they wanted. And this includes any American bank processing transactions for entities in or controlled by Iran or its citizens. However, most like large transactions between countries in the world are done using American dollars. There's a whole background on that. I don't get it. I'm not going to go into it, but they do. Which means American banks are largely involved in those transfers in one way or the other, which made it really hard for Iran to continue dealing with the rest of the world, which is kind of exactly what the U.S. wanted to do when they imposed the sanctions in the first place. These sanctions are usually followed by members of NATO and allies. When one creates sanctions, the others agree to follow it, and which Turkey is a member of NATO and did choose to abide by these sanctions. The corruption probe accused Halkbank and Reza of importing Iranian oil and gas into Turkey, but instead of paying it with dollars or including any banks, they instead sent gold, like billions of dollars in solid gold instead.
Okay. So they sent gold to the banks?
So the bank was paying for Iranian oil and gas in physical gold.
Okay.
And originally, the sanctions only prevented the payment in dollars or euros. So technically, this was a loophole to just pay in gold, but a bad faith loophole to exploit. Obviously, you knew what it meant. Like, come on. But after this loophole was closed, they just continued to do it. So also, they would funnel dollars into Iran through Turkish companies, through fabricated transaction documents, and they would use American banks for that, which is just in direct violation of the sanctions. You can't do that. So Reza would import the oil and then transport the money in the form of gold bullion from Turkey, first to Dubai, and then from Dubai to Iran.
Okay.
And all of these transactions and like the gold was stored by Halkbank, the National Bank of Turkey. And it was kept quiet by Riza bribing executives and political appointees at the bank. So when this probe happened and all these people were detained, police confiscated $17.5 million from the homes of these executives, including $4.5 million found in literal shoeboxes at Suleiman Aslan's house.
And this was all in gold bars.
No, this is in dollars.
Oh, this is in cash. Okay.
Yeah, they have actual dollars.
Oh my God.
Just like
in
shoeboxes in their house.
I hope he had big feet because that's a lot of shoeboxes.
Yeah, maybe he had some Jordans.
Oh, donks.
And all in all, it's believed that over $20 billion was moved this way to avoid sanctions. In 2012 alone, I guess they moved $2 billion in gold bullion to Dubai.
Oh my God.
Which I don't even want to know how much that fucking weighs.
Oh, a lot. That weighs a lot.
So it kind of reminds me of when we talked about the Vatican and they were like smuggling like Nazi gold.
Yes.
It's literally kind of like that.
Yeah,
They're literally
literally.
like smuggling gold between countries. Very, very interesting. And at the end of the day, of the 91 people detained on December 17th, 26 were officially arrested by the court, but the police weren't done just yet. They were planning on arresting even more people in a second wave of investigation, now with new evidence from what they found. And the list of targets included Erdogan's sons, Bilal and Barak, among others. The only problem is that I guess the government just had free reign to fire and shift around police and police captains and prosecutors in the judicial system, just like kind of at whim. So in response to the corruption arrest, the AKP government simply just like fired most of the police officers and prosecutors and moved them around and reappointed new people. And the new appointees just so happened they didn't want to carry out the new arrest order when it was handed down to them.
That's what?
So they just changed.
Yeah, they just didn't want to do it.
They reappointed the police with people they knew would not arrest them.
Oh.
So basically, in response to the police raiding them, they said, well, we'll just change the police.
That's one way to do it.
We need new police. These guys,
You know what? I don't think these guys are it.
these ones want to arrest us. Let's get some new guys in
Yeah.
here.
We're
Right?
going to get some new guys in here.
So then the list of people that they were going to arrest was publicly leaked to the press as well. And then to, obviously, the nation. On January 7th, the government went one further and released a decree removing 350 officers from their positions, including the chiefs who led the smuggling, and the organized crime divisions. And this is like a week afterwards. At this time, a video was also leaked on YouTube of an audio recording apparently of Erdogan telling one of his sons to quickly get rid of millions of dollars in response to the arrests, which sparked more public outcry.
Yeah.
Because now they're like suppressing this corruption probe extremely publicly.
Oh, yeah. They're not even trying to hide it.
And these come out and they're like, okay, this is obvious evidence now that you were actually doing this stuff, which only increased public outrage. Right. And the government's response was just to continue to throw fuel on the fire. And although Erdogan's cabinet was completely overhauled with 10 ministers being let go and multiple more resigning, including the 3 fathers of the sons that were arrested in the original probe, Erdogan took absolutely no accountability for the corruption.
Oh, of course he didn't.
He instead chose to blame it wholly on a political rival of his by the name of Fethullah Gulen, the leader of the quote-unquote Gulen movement. Now, the Gulen movement was one that supposed to seek a modernization of Islamic ways of life and embraced the secular rule government ideologies that Turkey was originally built on. So kind of the opposite to the AKP, that's probably why they didn't get along. The funny thing is that Gulen came to and has resided in Pennsylvania since 1999.
Pennsylvania of all places. Not even like California or New York.
I don't know.
Pennsyltucky, as my dad says.
The south of the east.
Yeah, honestly, they are.
So they accuse him of masterminding all of this from a literal world away with some crazy influence through an underground organization of people sympathetic to the movement that Erdogan publicly called the parallel state. The parallel. So he's literally like spouting like deep state propaganda.
Yeah.
Just as fat, being like, yeah, this is all perpetuated by the parallel state.
It's almost like
it's this one guy in
feels like QAnon-y.
Kind of. It's this one guy in Pennsylvania who doesn't like me, who doesn't want me to be president anymore. It's not that we took millions of dollars in bribes.
No, it's the guy in Pennsylvania.
Not it. It's that one guy in Pennsylvania. You understand how crazy that sounds? So
pretty crazy.
They have also blamed him for basically every other major attempt to displace the APK, including a serious military coup that was attempted in 2016. Like a branch of the government stormed the Capitol in Turkey.
That.
And they were like, it's that guy in Pennsylvania. He sent the tanks.
I remember that.
Yeah, well, they blamed him for that too. But in reality, it kind of seems like this guy Gulen is just kind of like an old man and kind of a nice old man. He literally won an award for peace from an American college. Aww. They gave him an award for peace.
Nice.
And he just seems kind of like
chill.
Yeah, like a Islamic philosopher, basically, who was in politics and then he got kicked out of the country. And then they just they scapegoated this one guy for everything for the next 20 years, bro.
He's like, what did I do? I did nothing.
Maybe it's more nuanced than that, but that seemed like it to me. The Turkish government actually tried to extradite him back to Turkey to face charges related to terrorism in 2016 because they were like, he did it. It's him. He's a terrorist. Get him back here. But the U.S. denied this after they found no evidence that Gulen was tied to any terrorist organizations.
Poor guy.
It's like, no. The terrorist label also is one that the APK would use a lot, as it was also the crime that was put upon those news outlets and journalists that were critical of the government. They would be arrested for like conspiracy or ties to terrorist movements just because they said
just
bad
because they
things about
spoke
the
out
government.
against the government.
Yeah, basically, I feel like the logic goes like this: any hypercritical piece about the government is obviously trying to cause political unrest, which is a form of domestic terrorism. Therefore, you are committing terrorism. I don't agree with that logic, but I'd assume that's what they would say.
Yeah, probably.
By the way, the media outlets that did report on these corruption arrests that were happening were met with staunch opposition from government, arrested, their journalists were jailed, and those who did not stop were all subject to surprise audits. They audited multiple media companies that just so happened to be critical and actually reporting on the corruption probe. And I mean, if you really want to get dark with the theories as well, there's also some belief that some police chiefs weren't just fired, as during this time, 2 different police chiefs, and one was an assistant police chief, but they were instead found dead. Hakan Yüksekdağ and Abdi Altanak. Their deaths were ruled as suicides at the time, but you got to admit the timing is extremely suspicious. It was literally between that first set of arrests and when the second set of arrests were planned.
No, they probably killed him.
These 2 people were found dead. And at least one of the families publicly disputes that it was a suicide. So,
the family publicly.
They were like,
oh,
it was not a
They're
suicide.
like, no, it wasn't. Yeah.
So, there's something unsavory here.
It definitely seems fishy that they would commit suicide with all this going. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like Jeffrey Epstein committing suicide. It's like,
yeah. I have a feeling that we're not going to be allowed in Turkey anytime soon.
Me and you.
Because of this episode.
Yeah, probably. My sister-in-law's grandma is banned from Turkey, so I'll get added to the watch list.
Maybe it's a badge of honor now. You don't know. In Turkey, all of these moves by the government were enough to get all of the charges related to the corruption completely dismissed. I mean, they got rid of the prosecutors. What are you going to do, right? And although there is still a current of opposition to Erdogan and the AKP, they remain insanely popular.
That's crazy. He is still in power after all of this, and there's been no ramifications for his actions.
Backed still by the strength of the Turkish economy, which actually does continue to get better. Yeah, I don't know. It's wild, especially because this is the whole thing is that they were supposed to be the first true party for real democracy was their thing. But then there's been this criticism from the West that they're becoming more and more authoritarian. And Erdogan is becoming more and more authoritarian, which honestly, I think if you keep the same person in power for long enough,
how does it not happen?
It just kind of seems to go that way.
I mean, people get an inflated ego. They get an inflated head. They are like, yeah, I can totally see how someone who is originally good for the country could then turn bad. You get too much power, it goes to your head.
Yeah.
You see that with celebrities all the time. Like, literally.
Jared Leto.
Looking
at you.
First the foot long, then the 6-inch. It's crazy.
That's Jared Fogle, dude.
Oh.
I'm talking about the guy who played the Joker in Suicide Squad and is the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars. Not fucking Jared Fogle. Nothing went to Jared Fogle's head. He was just a fucking pedophile, dude. What?
I know. I don't know why I messed them up.
Just the realization, I was like, what the fuck is that reference? I was like, does Jared Leto really like Subway? What the fuck?
Oh my God, wrong Jared. It's the wrong Jared.
No, they got the right Jared.
Wait, what
they got
did
the right Jared.
What did Jared Leto do?
Oh, he's just fucking annoying.
Oh, he's just crazy?
Yeah, he's just annoying. And he also has that like cult.
I can't believe I fucked that up and switched those two.
Well, I can believe it. So Turkey even found themselves on the receiving end of U.S. sanctions themselves, which were imposed after the U.S. claimed their longstanding NATO ally was actually providing aid to Russia amidst the conflict in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, I should say. Which, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but obviously there was reason to believe it. So they're now on the sanctions list.
Listen, countries give money to other countries they shouldn't all the time. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So although that ending is kind of bittersweet, there was at least some justice handed down in this corruption case, right? Reza Zarrab was actually arrested in 2016 in Miami, Florida, after he brought his family there to go to Disney World, of all places.
He's like fucking El Chapo.
He's just trying to go to the happiest place on earth.
He's like, I'm just trying to make Mickey Mouse.
And he gets arrested for all these, this avoiding international sanctions? What the heck? Don't come to America, you idiots.
Did he at least get some Dole Whip before he got arrested?
I know. So if he was
a picture in front of Cinderella's castle.
If he was arrested in Miami, I bet he was arrested at the airport. So I'd assume it was him coming in. They probably saw him.
Wait, why was he going to Miami? Why did he fly into Miami to go to Orlando? That doesn't even make sense.
I don't know.
He deserved to be arrested. Why didn't he fly into the Orlando area?
I don't know the logistics. I wasn't his assistant. I'm not on his. I didn't read his schedule, Nina. What do you want from me?
I'm just saying it doesn't make sense.
Zarrab was indicted on multiple charges of money laundering and bank fraud for his scheme to sidestep Iranian sanctions. And facing up to 75 years in prison, Zarrab decided, you know what? I'll take a plea deal. And he spilt the beans on all of his co-conspirators in the case.
Ew.
So Erdoğan knew that Zarrab had some dirt on him, obviously. So he openly, or I guess not openly, but he supposedly petitioned Biden in a closed-door meeting to release Zarrab and be like, hey, stop going after this guy, please.
Wait. Erdoğan met with Biden.
Yes.
And said, release Zarrab?
Yeah.
To go back to Turkey?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because he knew that,
he knew he was going to,
Zarrab was the one behind this whole thing, bribing everybody.
Yeah.
So he's definitely could just be like, oh, yeah, that fucking guy absolutely paid me off. Or I paid him off, whatever. So Biden refused. And based on, also, Erdogan's wife, I guess, also tried to petition Jill Biden, which I don't know how much pull. I mean, maybe the first lady might have more pull than you think. But so based on information given by Zarrab, the U.S. Arrested Mehmet Hakan Atilla, the deputy chief executive of Halkbank, the Turkish National Bank. Then later that year in September of 2017, they announced more charges against the Minister of Economic Affairs and Suleiman Aslan. Remember him? Do you remember him?
Yeah, I remember his name earlier because I thought he had a cool name.
Oh, yeah. He's the director of the bank.
Well, I couldn't have told you what he did, but I remember his name.
Great. I'm glad we do this show. Attila.
There's a lot of info in this one.
Attila was eventually sentenced to 32 months in prison. But as far as I can tell, the others never left Turkey and therefore never faced charges. They never came to Disney World.
They didn't. Well, they watched what happened to Zarrab, so I mean that was later. But
they're like, we'll build one in Turkey instead.
What if we built
Disney will do it too. They love money.
Oh yeah, they don't give a
They
shit.
love money.
They don't give a shit.
They'd build one in North Korea if they paid them enough.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So Zarab was given a new identity and is believed to be hiding in plain sight in Florida, still providing information to the government to this day, and still living extremely lavishly.
Of course.
Supposedly they took a picture of him like on some like nice horse, and he's like investing still. I don't know. Also, there was such a funny picture of him before he came to America. He's literally standing next to like a literal pile of money. And I'm like, this guy's the worst.
Oh my God.
He's got a stack of US dollars and it's like him posing next to it with a goofy ass grin and like
That's
a thumbs
funny.
up. And I was like, oh my God,
That
dude.
is funny.
And he just got away. He just got to flip on everybody. And he gets a new identity. He gets to live in Florida.
He's part of the witness protection program.
I will say immediately after he decided to take a plea deal and give up all the information in Turkey, they seized all of his assets the next day.
Shit.
They were like, fine, we're taking your family house and shit then.
I mean, fair.
Petty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him.
Petty. He is also believed to be a key contributor. I don't know why or how he was involved in this, but he's believed to be a key contributor to the special counsel investigation that saw the arrest of former White House National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
What?
Yeah, well, if you remember, Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to like providing false claims about his talks with Russian leaders to Congress, and that's what the probe was into, what he got arrested for, and convicted. Well, he pled guilty, so convicted, and then pardoned by Donald Trump later. But supposedly, Reza Zarab had something to do with that.
You know what? Nothing shocks me anymore.
But that's not public knowledge. So, that in brief is the background, lead up to, and fallout from the 2013 Turkey corruption scandal that saw tens of high-ranking officials detained, if only momentarily, and led to multiple arrests right here in the US of A. The part that people are quick to point out, and my biggest take-home from this, is really that the Erdogan-led APK has placed on free media in the country of Turkey. How can a country be holding itself up on a pillar of quote-unquote democracy while simultaneously suppressing the media through threats and jail sentences, which is one of the most important aspects to having an actual free and fair democracy, is the ability to be criticized. And they don't let that happen. And even worse, Erdogan himself was the target of this kind of censorship from the previous government when he was jailed for reading that poem. And he used that as his platform to launch himself into power, and has turned around and immediately started doing that to everyone else who opposes him. So keep your government accountable, which is a good time to mention that there is an election going on here in the United States. And we would like to encourage everyone to do some actual research and register to vote and go out and make a difference in the election. Your vote matters, and this election matters immensely for the future of you and a lot of your and our friends. So please go out and vote.
Yes.
So soapbox speech done, and episode done.
Yes.
How you feeling, Nina?
My brain is fuzzy.
Yeah, I'm looking in your eyes. It's just like they just go back forever. You could fall in there.
You could fall in, yeah.
Lights on. No one's home.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you're home with your headphones on right now.
Yeah, listening.
You're not zoned out.
I
too
didn't
much.
zone out. I just
Zoned in.
I tried to zone.
You got your concentration face on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I drank too much pop.
Story of my life. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. If you like what you heard, and for some reason you're like, do more complex political corruption cases, Kashan.
Just Kashan.
Didn't you know that this is what you were getting into, Kashan? Aren't you so happy you did this, Kashan? Kind of. I am happy I learned about this. I hope you're happy you learned about it too. And if you want to,
I'm happy we learned about it.
and if you want to support the show more because of it, then why don't you? By leaving a review, all right, on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. You can write one on Apple Podcasts. We actually, there was someone left one on there recently that was actually hilarious. Can you look it up? I loved this, by the way. Thank you so much for sending this.
This is from It's Mitch. Okay. Nina, the unashamed thirst queen.
True. They pegged you.
And
I know what you
I
want to say.
peg them.
See?
And Kashan, the undeniable nerd, makes for a good combination. I drive for work, and I've listened to every episode over the last 6 weeks for 8 hours a day. Are you a truck driver?
I guess.
I wish there was more. Well, we're making more.
Episode a week.
Nina and Kashan do an excellent job of providing context to their discussion topics while keeping it simple enough for a layman like myself to understand what they're talking about. Personally, I enjoy their tangents. Thank you, it's Mitch. And it keeps the mood fun and the hosts relatable. Aw. The unashamed thirst queen.
The unashamed thirst queen. That's what I'm calling you from now on.
Hey, somebody else said fell into this podcast, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, so
great mix of facts and fun. You can feel the genuine friendship between them.
Which is weird because we are not friends. So if you want to support us like that lovely written 5-star review, then please do. You can write one on Apple Podcasts or just leave a star on Spotify. If you don't have those options, then you can just follow. If you're watching on our YouTube on the video, then you can go ahead and leave a comment, like the video, whatever you want to do there. And if you can consume it that way, then feel free to see our faces if you want. You can also support us for free by following us and engaging with us on our social medias. It's facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands, Instagram at whitecollars_redhands, Twitter at whitecollarspod, TikTok, that's going to be whitecollarsredhands. You got it. You can go to our website, whitecollarsredhands.com. You can click the button on the top that says check out our merch. It goes to TeePublic. You can buy a hat, a shirt, a hoodie, a sticker, a notebook.
I want to buy stickers.
You can buy a bunch of things over there that supports us directly. Please do. And while you're on our website, why not contact us there with the contact us page or send an email to whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com and suggest an episode. We do at least one fan-submitted episode every single season, so feel free to send one over there, and you might be included in a future White Collars Red Hands episode. You know what's a really good way to do it, Nina? Tell your friends, right? Mm-hmm. You talk all the time anyway. You're a talky person. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. I'm not talking about anyone specifically. Talking about you. I'm talking about you. Okay.
You're a yapper.
You're a
yappity
You're a certified yapaholic. So why don't you throw in some references to White Collars Red Hands when you can? Okay. Thank you very much. Other than that, am I missing anything?
No. Whatever, it's fine.
Well, from a nerd and the Thirst Queen, thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week on another episode of White Collars, Red Hands.